Caloroga Shark Media.
I do you guys straight when I have nothing. Today I've got stuff, and the weekend's pretty good too. So, Memorial Day weekend, I get it. Not everybody listens, but don't blow off the episodes thinking I have nothing, because they're actually pretty good. Hi, I'm Johnny Mac with your daily comedy news. Stephen Colbert with a pretty good joke. Earlier this week, Trump's social media account put out a bit of disturbing content. It was a campaign video with a headline about a unified Reich. Now, before you get too worked up, there's a simple explanation. Donald Trump wants to rule over a unified Reich. I love that joke because of the simplicity. Let me digress here. I'm actually saving this as a real topic for Monday, but I just shared in the Facebook group, which is Daily Comedy News Podcast Group, Joe Coy trailer. And dude, can you go more than 2 words without an F-bomb? We'll start a discussion in the Facebook group, Daily Comedy News Podcast Group, about working clean. And I'm not saying you have to work clean, but I am saying don't work dirty for no reason. And if you play that Joe Coy trailer, you'll hear what I'm talking about. We'll do that on Monday. Shane Gillis threw out the first pitch at the Philadelphia Phillies game on Wednesday. Shane said, I'm trying not to be like 50 Cent. If you've never seen it, 50 Cent had one of the worst ceremonial first pitches of all time. I got 1 day of practice in. I was at the University of Texas. I got to throw from the mound a little. NBC's John Clark asked Shane Gillis how he felt leading up to the first pitch. Let's listen.
You perform in front of a lot of people.
Yeah.
Is that nerve-wracking or is this?
This is way more nerve-wracking. It's a test of my manhood. I'm certain I'm going to fail.
You're going to be fine.
Right,
You're going to be fine. How cool is this for you?
This is incredible.
In Pennsylvania.
It's awesome. This is a cool team. I'm happy to hopefully not embarrass myself.
You'll be fine.
We'll see. Go Phils.
Shane Gillis, a southpaw from Pennsylvania, threw a strike. Congratulations. Outkick saw that new Shane Gillis show Tires on Netflix. I'm looking forward to it, but last night I went to see the Rolling Stones. Mick Jagger and Keith Richards are 80, by the way, which is encouraging. I could host this thing another 25 years. Oh, I saw my buddy Sal yesterday, and he was asking me, where do you record from? Do you go to a studio? And I'm like, no. Basement, USB mic, straight into my MacBook. And he's like, that's what I thought. Sounds good. Well, thank you, Sal. But yeah, I'm in my basement. I digress. All right. Outkick talking about tires. The headline from Outkick, Shane Gillis's new comedy series is a massive middle finger to wokeness. They write in a non-spoilery way. What I can say is that Tires couldn't care less about what should and shouldn't be allowed to be joked about. The premiere episode includes jokes about, I got to clean this up, favors that you might do for somebody you really like. You know what I'm saying? Nudge, nudge, wink, wink, say no more. The result you get from such a favor, nudge, nudge, wink, wink. OnlyFans, where, as you know, sometimes I lock myself in the basement and I watch some comedy from Natasha Leggero. I don't know what you think I'm doing down here. Reliving the high school football glory days. Uday Hussein lying about hooking up with women and being an idiot. Where else can you find a show with jokes about sex and the deceased son of Saddam Hussein? That's a good question. It's a pure R-rated comedy, and it's exactly what Shane Gillis fans have come to expect from him. It's absolutely everything the anti-comedy woke mob hates. Is there actually an anti-comedy woke mob? Does that actually exist? Or is it just like, we just write articles about it, and I talk about it every day, and Chappelle does 20 minutes about it, and Gervais tweets about it, and everybody writes articles about how everyone's being canceled while Louis C.K. plays Madison Square Garden. Is there an anti-woke mob? I haven't seen it. The jokes are so edgy at times that you might even feel a little uncomfortable, and I loved every second of it. The entire premise is a middle finger to people who want to sanitize comedy. Again, are those people? Or maybe it's me, because I don't want Joe Coy to drop F-bombs. Maybe I'm the anti-woke mob. Wow. I just had a self-awakening. Tires also includes appearances from Stavros Halkias and Andrew Schulz. Schultz's character immediately gets hit with pejoratives as soon as he's introduced. Again, the show is edgy as hell, and I love it. Speaking of Andrew Schulz, he just performed at Abu Dhabi Comedy Week. The national news said, comedian doesn't hold back in UAE return. They tell us it's rare for a comedy show to leave you tearing up with emotion, but that's exactly what happened when I saw Andrew Schulz at Etihad Arena on Tuesday. It was a return to the area. Apparently, Andrew had played there in October as part of UFC Showdown Week. The writer says, back then was the first time I'd heard of Schulz. Curious to know who this American comedian was that had sold out Etihad Arena. I came across a short clip he uploaded on his YouTube channel. I instantly became a fan. After all, who wouldn't be impressed by someone from the U.S. learning and joking about an Arabic slang used to describe teenagers who hang around malls in groups? The writer then shares that he or she went to see Andrew in Boston and then added, I was surprised to see the same opening acts I'd watched in the U.S. Comedians, Derek Post and Mark Gagnon, who took the stage and warmed up the crowd. While they were both entertaining, I'd already seen them perform the same jokes a few months previously, making me worry that Schulz might do the same. If you go see somebody in Boston and the Abu Dhabi Comedy Week and you get the same material, I don't think you could be like, what? How come you're not doing a fresh set? Yeah. If you're not going to play your hits at the Abu Dhabi Comedy Week, I don't know when you're going to. This is not The Cellar. Good news, the writer says, I was relieved to learn that wouldn't be the case as he stepped down on the stage with a thin bamboo stick, or as he joked, his hamaki stick. I hope I pronounced that right. That is the aforementioned slang word about teens in malls, something to defend himself from the teens in malls and keep them at bay. In the 2 times I've now seen him live, I'm continually impressed at just how good he is at what he does. And he personalizes his sets based on what city he's in. He has a seamless way of knocking out jokes in such a natural way that you'd already think he was quite familiar with the region. That's cool. Wow, we're in the weeds here. While most of his jokes were hits, I did have to turn to my partner at one point to see if he understood a quip about UAE beating Saudi Arabia in football, as there seemed to be some confusion. Even with Schulz seemingly asked the crowd if that was true, my partner clarified that he thought it was a reference to Al Anin beating Al Nassr in the AFC Champions League a couple months ago. That's deep. Andrew, that's deep. Gianmarco Seressi, his star is rising. Pix 11, New York City, are aware of who he is now. They had him on. They tell us recently Gianmarco dropped a series of semi-not-safe-for-work announcements for the 3rd leg of his Leaning In tour, which features Gianmarco in various states of censored undress, but with a winking off-kilter approachability. It's this charming blend of self-awareness and unassuming male energy that have made Seressi something of an internet heartthrob for countless scores of straight women and gay men. I wasn't aware of any of that. I'm neither of those, and I'm a fan. Though a star has been on the rise for some time, the Leaning In tour has coincided with some recent major industry attention for the host of the Downside with Gianmarco Seressi podcast. He says, I was always funny leaning. I always enjoyed comedy, and I probably thrive more in comedic roles than dramatic roles, even though deep down I always wanted to be like Daniel Day-Lewis, he says with a wink. But then after several years in New York and not getting that much work and struggling, I finally wrote a play for myself, and it just lent itself to being comedic. I got very addicted to the feedback loop of stand-up comedy. In stand-up comedy, I immediately get to find out if something is good or bad or how to make it better, and it just sucked me in. Pix 11 says, among Gianmarco's strongest comedic attributes is the loose and cutting but kind way the comedian navigates awkward situations that can inevitably arise at a comedy show full of drinking adults. Earlier this year, he was performing at a drag bar in Ohio, doing some Trump material. A guest in the front row let her support be known. Gianmarco said, there's no way you're in the front row of a drag show and voting for Trump. I don't think it's my job to take a poll before the show. Like, is there anyone in the audience who's Republican? But you got to acknowledge it, especially seeing as how drag queens have become the focal point for conservatives to try and use hysteria to incite homophobia, etc. Anyway, I could not talk about it, so I challenged her on it. And I said, how can you be at a drag show when the people you're voting for would, in their fantasies, ban this from happening? All right, I have an on-the-fly update. That first half was pretty good. I bumped 2 stories to Monday, and now I can tell you Monday is also pretty good. So listen all weekend. Solid episodes all the way through. Huzzah. Following up on yesterday, I was doing a Taylor Swift rant that, I do listen back in the car every day on my way to the National Donuts chain. And as I listen back to Thursday's episode, that first segment where I was talking about Nikki Glaser, I didn't like it. I didn't nail it. I'd like to do that one again. Just didn't nail it. Heather jumped in on the Facebook group, which is Daily Comedy News Podcast Group, not knowing that I didn't like the segment, but I didn't like the segment. And Heather wrote, friendly neighborhood Swiftie here. Just wanted to say that Nikki Glaser brought up Taylor Swift. She wrote, do not insert Joe Coy joke. Okay. Because on Taylor's new album, she has Thank You, Amy, and she reminds us that the spelling on Thank You, Amy has a capital K, a capital I, and a capital M, and the rest in lower cases, and K-I-M spells Kim. She has a song on the new album that people think is about Kim and reignited the Kim K hate. I think that was Nikki's first thought when Kim K got booed at the Brady roast, but then she remembered that this family sucks in general in most people's opinions. Fun fact, Nikki's body-shaming comments about Taylor were used in the Miss Americana documentary, which Nikki has since apologized for. Appreciate the note there. I do like Taylor Swift, by the way. I like the bit more than I like Taylor Swift. When I saw Taylor last year, that was the best concert. I think I've talked about this in the past. And I'll let you know how the Rolling Stones were last night. But when I left Taylor, and I'm a big Springsteen fan, I said, okay, Bruce, you and the guys are going to stand at one end of the arena and play guitars for 2.5 hours? I'm no longer impressed. Heather also tagged her post with hashtag Bob's Burgers Fans Unite. Well, Ellen is a Bob's Burgers fan. Now, I'm hoping the Bob's Burgers fans unite, and maybe, you know, if people run with the gag enough, maybe they'll make like a fan film, or maybe they'll like actually produce an episode of Bob's Burgers from all this merch, and then we could all laugh at the joke that the show was real for the last 14 years. We'll see. Ellen went to buymeacoffee.com. Thank you, Ellen, and bought me 3 iced coffees. You can hear one right here. I'm going to keep doing this because I haven't done this in a while. And she wrote, in the words of the wise David Letterman, if it weren't for the coffee, I'd have no identifiable personality, whatever. She adds, I believe that applies to Johnny Mac as well. I'm not offended. Anytime anyone wants to compare me in any way to David Letterman, great. Compliment accepted. Thank you, Ellen. Hope you're enjoying Bob's Burgers. Oh, my brain is fried here. So I'm looking at the next story. It is from People, and it says, Richards tells People, and I'm like, do I have a Keith Richards from the Rolling Stones? Do I have a Keith Richards story in here? Oh, no. It's Michael Richards. He was Kramer on Seinfeld. Still talking about that infamous night where he lost it on stage. He said, I was immediately sorry the moment I said it on stage. I'm not looking for a comeback. My anger was all over the place, and it came through hard and fast. Anger is quite a force, but it happened. Rather than run from it, I dove into the deep end and tried to learn from it. Hasn't been that easy. Crisis managers wanted me to do damage control, but as far as I was concerned, the damage was inside of me. He says he has spent the past 17 years in deep analysis. It was time to figure out where all the anger was coming from. Part of it came down from his own insecurities. Somehow I couldn't connect to the joy of being an artist. I was a good character actor, but I was comfortable being the character, not being me. I said no to the offer of a star in the Hollywood Walk of Fame. I didn't feel deserving. I said no to hosting SNL twice because I didn't feel good enough. I never really felt satisfied with my Seinfeld performance. Fame magnified my insecurities. As for the infamous night in 2006, he says, I'm not racist. I have nothing against black people. The man who told me I wasn't funny had just said what I've been saying to myself for a while. I felt put down. I wanted to put him down. The Vail Comedy Festival back this weekend kicks off tonight. Jenny Zagrino is your headliner. You'll find her at the Gambit Bar tonight at 7:30. She says, I feel like every time we do comedy in Colorado, I have an amazing time. Last year, I was at the High Plains Festival in Denver, and it was so great to hang out with my peers from all over the country. My favorite memory from doing a festival like this is the crappy diner food you have the next morning after the closing party. I love seeing friends I haven't seen in a long time at festivals, discovering new comedians that are hitting the scene, my favorite part of festivals, crazy after parties. I like to go back to the hotel and sleep, and just knowing the funniest people in the world are on the same show as you. It's the craziest thing that has ever happened to you at a comedy show. She says, one time I asked Blake Griffin for his phone number. Blake Griffin, the NBA player, best known, I think, for his time on the Clippers, the LA Clippers. He gave it to me. I don't know if it was real or not. Comedian Mark Masters is the organizer of the Vail Comedy Festival, and he said, you can go to comedy festivals where you're going to a theater and you're watching with 500 or 1,000 people. You're watching most of our shows with less than 100 people. And after the show, you go to any of the great restaurants in and around Vail Village, and the comedians you just saw on stage are sitting right next to you. Boy, imagine if Patton Oswalt was there eating a hot dog. That would be some scene. It's very common for me to hear stories about guests buying beers for comics. I'm thinking, what's the term? There's a term, I can't think of it, for female fans of comedy who sometimes buy a beer for comedians. Sounds like it might be an opportunity to buy a beer for a comedian this weekend. There's a term, I can't think of it right now. Comedian Monroe Martin is originally from Philadelphia, lives in New York City. He will also be headlining the Vail Comedy Festival. Mark Masters was asked, how does he pick who comes to the festival? There's a whole committee that scores their submission tapes. It's a complicated process, and I don't choose the comedians. Those comedians get scored by a group of industry professionals and selected through a screening process. I'll chime in. I assume part of the screening process is cost, like, let's go to the Johnny Mac Comedy Festival. I'm going to have Chappelle, Seinfeld, Mulaney, Gaffigan, Bill Burr, and Shane Gillis. Pretty cool festival. I can't afford to book it. And that is your comedy news for today. Oh, and look at the clock. This was not a short episode today, and I bumped another story. So we'll have robust stuff all weekend. If you're taking the weekend off, and bring your podcast app with you, or catch up on Tuesday. I'm cool with that. Have a great weekend. See you tomorrow.